Welcome everyone to East Meets West at the Vice. Today, the 17th of April, Eric Austin and Al Beatty are going to be talking about spinners. Let me get my friend Eric in here and we can chat about spinners for a minute and get started on that. Eric, what do you have in mind for us?
Well, I've got a very pure East meets West thing going on, I think. The earliest spinners I remember were hen hackle wings. It was a rusty spinner with hen hackle wings, didn't have a split tail, and had dubbing for the body. Years later, that was in the 60s. Years later, I started, I think on one of my earliest trips to Spring Creek in Pennsylvania, I was researching what to use there. And AK Best had a variation of a hen wing spinner with a quill body. And I can't remember, it was an article that he did about fishing Spring Creek in PA. So he was a Westerner going east, and he created the fly I'm going to tie, which is a quill body hen hackle spinner. He created a sulfur version for Spring Creek. So a couple years after that article was published, I took this fly to Spring Creek myself, and man, just had one of my most memorable nights on Spring Creek with this fly. And here it is. Now I don't know if if AK Best had split tails or not on this. I can't remember, and the article now is long gone. It was online, but I can't find it now. So I've done mine with split tails because I like split tails on spinners. But this is basically his fly. And here's the recipe. And nothing too complicated here. You can use any thread. You can use any dry fly hook. I'm going to use Coq de Leon on the tails. It doesn't matter. And I use these quills for the stripped hackle stem. I don't strip and dye my own. I do a lot of dyeing, but I haven't gone there. And the wings are just white hen hackle. And this is whiting American hen hackle that I'm going to use. I'll show it to you here. Oops. I thought I was going second today, so I didn't turn the camera on. Hang on. I'll get it. This is whiting American. Now, not all of these will work. You need some of the really small stuff down at the bottom here, about that size. A lot of this is very large, would work for other things. I'm going to get started. Leave a little space. I'm going to use my own, I like a wide spread on my tails, and most of you have seen this before, but I'll do it again. I'll leave this tag long, go to the end, and make a thread bump with X-wraps. And I want a pretty serious bump. I used to try to keep it as small as possible, but sometimes I wouldn't get the spread I wanted. So I'm making it bigger these days, about 7 sets of X-wraps or so. This is a piece of Coq de Leon I'm going to use for the tails. And I just bend it so I can get the number of strands I want. which is somewhere around 6 for this. It could be a few more than that. I want about hook length. I like long tails on spinners. I'll grab it there after measuring it. I'll put it right up against the bump and tie this right on top. And I'll go about halfway back to that thread bump. Split the tails into two more or less even groups. And then what I do is I like to hold this thread down at an angle and tie and start wrapping back towards the thread bump. The near tail fibers will go up as I wrap back because due to thread torque, and the far tail fibers will tend to want to go down, so I'm holding them in place. And when I get to the back here, I'll do some side to side pressure. And I get a really nice wide split this way, which helps with flotation. At least, do I really know the physics of that? And am I positive of what I'm saying? Well, I'm absolutely convinced. but I couldn't. It's it's like outriggers on a canoe. The way I look at it. And these do float fairly well, so I'm going to say it's working. All right, I want to post the thread now at about the 1/3 mark on the hook. That should be close. And I've got a couple of feathers that I'm going to tie in back to back so that the tips splay out. Let me try to get them evened up. Let's see. And I'll separate them out. Again, I want these to be about hook length. Might be a little long. Want to tie these on right on top of the hook with a pinch. About 5 turns back, and then I'll cut this short at an angle, but the quill body itself will give me a taper, so I don't need to concern myself with the taper. Sometimes I will tie in the quill body right after putting the tail on. I didn't this time, but it's just saves you one pass of thread. These quills get really flimsy around the tips. I've got 2 here. Might even take a little more off. I've been soaking these today, so hopefully we won't get any splitting. I want to show this technique, and just in case there's somebody here who doesn't use it, it's the right angle technique where basically this goes in at right angles to the thread. I like to take a loose loop of thread when I do this. I got this. I got into this tail trying to show you this, but and the nice thing about this technique, if you don't get into the tails, is the stem then, or the butt section, or in this case, the tip, will get tied off underneath the hook. You do it that way. I want to get this first turn back as far as I can get it. Yeah. Pretty sure I should be able to get this side by side. Maybe one more. Yeah. Trapping it a couple, 3 times. Cut it. Next we'll post the wings up. We're going to want them pretty straight up and down. There we go. So this fly has very flat, spent wings. And that can be a problem when you're fishing the fly. This fly is tough to see, I think. So it's one of the reasons I switched to CDC and do a little different winging. My winging technique for these is I start with diagonal wraps on the near wing, holding the near wing in place, trying not to affect the far wing, and I go up the wing with about 4 or 5 wraps, 4 or 5 turns. Oops. And I don't want to do that, what I just did there. Let me start again. Very diagonal wraps, up the wing, 4 or 5 turns. Then one turn behind here, then hold this one out in place. And if it twists on you a little bit, try twisting it the other way a lot. This is why you have to keep these wraps diagonal. You tend to affect the near wing if you don't. Which I've done. So I'll just take a couple more diagonal wraps there. Well, in that case, one did it. Just want to get these wings as flat as I can get them. And I want to do it with thread. I don't want to try to rely on the dubbing later to place the wings where I want them. I might take a loop here. Did one set of figure eights there just to try to keep these. Yeah, that's the way I like them. I got to make sure I don't too much tension on that. All right. Now all we have to do is dub. I'm using a pretty rough dubbing here. This is Renee Harrop's Professional. You can use anything really. And I'm going to wax the thread a little bit because I always like to give Al's dubbing wax a plug.
Checks in the mail, Eric. Checks in the mail.
All right. All right. That's what I wanted to hear. No, I really like this wax, and it's so convenient to use. I have my own wax here. Here's some of it here, as a matter of fact, and it's not convenient to use. So I like it for certain things. It's a little, it's not as tacky as Al's. Let me zoom out here so you can watch this dubbing. Which is clockwise this time. And this isn't fur dubbing, so you can get it fairly compact, but it's almost a wool dubbing. It's flax or something. What I like about this dubbing is it floats the fly well. And that's why I use this stuff on this fly. Because there's not much here to float the fly otherwise. It's not a bad idea to angle the wings up slightly. I always do it with CDC. To be honest, I've always tied these hen hackle wings very flat, but they're the only thing I don't like about these. They're really effective wings, but they get this. They're just hard to see on the water at times. You'd think white wings like this would show right up, but they don't. And you can leave this extraneous dubbing if you want. I usually pluck it off. But anyway, there it is.
That's an awesome looking fly.
Oh, thanks, Al. Yeah, it's boy, does it work. That's all I can tell you. At least it works. This exact fly works great on Spring Creek in Pennsylvania. And I don't know if my friend Tom's here tonight. He had a cabin on Penns Creek for years, and he could speak to how well this works there, but I'm sure if it works at Spring Creek, it's going to work at Penn's as well. There's no doubt in my mind. I don't have firsthand experience with it because the only spinners that I typically fish there are these great big mahogany spinners for the March Browns. So anyway, there you go. And Al, I think it's your turn.
I thank you, Eric. I'm going to put a side by side there just in case there might be a question or two from the folks out there. One of the things I wanted to point out to everyone, and I don't even know if they were noticing or not, but Eric is a master at the way he sets those wings slightly above the hook shank, and then uses the weight of the bobbin and his two fingers, one front, one back, to gradually lower those wings in place. And I don't care if he's putting on spinner wings like he just did, or he's doing a wet fly or a full dress Atlantic salmon fly. That's what he does, and he's a master at it. Watch it sometime, and if you didn't notice it, go back and look at the video on it.
Thanks, Al. Yeah, I tried to make the way I mount wings kind of universal in a way. In other words, I do it the same way all the time, no matter what I'm doing. Dry flies, wet flies, doesn't matter. Spinners, it's the same thing. And I don't always nail them, you know. You're dealing with natural materials, and so you never know. But
that's you don't always nail the material, that's for sure.
yeah, but for me, winging flies is the most fun thing about fly tying. I love putting wings on.
Awesome. Any questions out there? Looks like you got the message across very well, Eric. Well, we'll move into the one that I'm going to share. Well, let's see here. And like Eric, let's start out with the recipe. And this is a Wonder Wing spinner. It is a concept fly like almost everything I tie. It's not a specific pattern. So you see that there's a lot of variation in the recipe. It can be a size 8 to 22. I'm going to use gray thread today, but I use everything under the sun, most of the time black or gray. The tail will be hackle barbs, and it's going to be like Eric had. It will be coq de leon. Sometimes I put on a rib, sometimes I don't. I'm not going to tonight. And the body could be quill, peacock herl, stripped, or a biot. And I'm going to do a biot body tonight so that you can get a comparison between the biot body and the quill body in what we present today. The wings are Wonder Wings, and we'll spend a little bit of time talking about them. The thorax can be dubbing, whatever color you want, or whatever is required for the insect, or peacock, and I'm going to do peacock. The hackle is optional and can be choice. I'll show you a sample of one with hackle on it. I really prefer it without. I think it just overdresses this particular style of a fly. And the head will be thread. So let's take a quick look at the materials themselves, and I'll just point out what we'll be using here. Okay. No, I won't. I'll try that again. There we go. And now I'll just point out the fact, well, I'm using hooks, obviously. These are size 12. This right here is coq de leon fibers. I've already got them in a clip waiting for me. I'm going to be using a Whiting Farms turkey biot, peacock, and a Whiting Farms, like Eric did, but a different color, but a Whiting Farms American hackle for the Wonder Wings. And then you can see a clip right down here that I have with a couple already selected. But anyway, we'll get out of here and move over here because I want to share the fly with you. But before I can see anything, I need to change glasses. So I'll do that right now. And while I'm changing glasses, I'm going to let you all see what the fly looks like. And there it is. It's the Wonder Wing spinner. And I'm slipping on glasses. And you can see some very definite similarities between the one that Eric tied and this one. However, you can see that I've wrapped the biot so that it has the little ridges. And it's up to you which you want, whether you think it's important to do that or the other. But you can see our flies are both very similar. I mean, how could they be very much different? They're spinners, a mayfly spinner. This just happens to be different colored, and I did not divide my tail. So to get started with everything, let me just pull this one. Oh, wait a minute. I wanted to share with you. This is one that I tied earlier. I'll get that out of the way, and then I'll bring this one in. I tied this earlier, and it's got hackle. And I don't know about you, but I just think the hackle, well, it just makes it too darn busy. And the real spinner itself is really pretty well stripped down when it hits the water. So anyhow, I'll set that aside for now. That aside, let's get a hook into the vise. All right. Let me slip over here to the materials area and I'll grab a couple of things. First, I need my gray thread. I'll set that over there, and I'm going to need tail material right off the bat, so I'll set that over there as well. And we'll come back to the vise. And for those of you new to the channel, you know that I keep my thread stored under an O-ring. That just keeps the darn stuff from coming undone. I know there's something about me and thread, it always comes undone. So when I started using O-rings, that helped the process. Now I'm going to go to a position on the hook shank about 1/3 back from the hook eye. That's where I will be setting the wing, and that's where I put my first wraps. I'm going to wrap part of the way to the end of the shank and stop. And I never tie hackle barbs or a tail on anything but a bare hook, except in a few rare occasions. And here is the feather that I've got. And why am I using this color? It's because the one that it was left over from the last batch of flies that I tied. Let me turn off my audio for just a second. Sorry, problems with respiratory. Anyway, I'm going to just grab a bundle of these, and I want them to be a little bit longer than the hook. Set them in place, tilt them down on my side. Looks like I've got a wowzer in there. I didn't want that, so let me re-grab those. You see how those tips are not quite lined up? Well, I'm going to see if I can change that. I'm going to pull everything down, get them a little bit better. Now they're a little closer in length. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut this off back here so they won't miss a line, and maybe I can keep them about the same length. A little trick there on lining up your hackle fiber tail if it doesn't want to line up. Start on my side and let thread torque bring it up onto the hook shank, top of the shank, wrap to the end of the shank, and back to my starting place. I'll trim off the waist and come forward right back to my starting point at the 1/3 spot. Now, before I get my hackles out here, let's take a look at a feather off of that whiting hen cape. And I want you to notice that this out here towards the tip, the shaft down the center here is very, very slender. In fact, down in here it's almost non-existent. And you can travel along here and it stays pretty consistent until you get right there. It's kind of the dividing line between the fuzzy stuff and the non-fuzzy stuff. I know that's not a good scientific name for it, but that's what I call it. So the part you want to get rid of when you're doing Wonder Wings is where the stems get big. So right about here where I'm pointing, that's about where I will cut that feather and use it for a Wonder Wing. Well, I've already got a couple prepared for that, and I got them in a clip, and I want you to notice that I have them so they're opposing each other. And that I have the both of them trimmed so they're about the same length. Now, a wonder wing is produced by sweeping the fibers back on the stems of two feathers that are opposing each other like that. So you've already seen that. And now I've swept that back, and of course, my division between top and bottom is really messed up. And we'll talk about a couple things here. We've got the stem part on, and I'm not going to flip it over, but on the other side, well, maybe you can see it. Won't be sure, but yeah, you can see, and the stem on the other side. They need to be that length of stem on a standard dry fly where the wings are standing up. You want that to be about half the length of the hook shank. But on the spinners, I find I want that to be a little bit less. So I'm going to use my bodkin now to select both feathers, top and bottom, and get those all lined up. Now they're the same on either side, and it's less than half the length of the shank. And why is that? In fact, I don't have them evenly divided. The one on top is slightly out of skew. There we go. Now they're even, as you can see. I want on my spinners, I find because the wings are out flat, I will have a corkscrew problem if I make the wings too full on this particular wing. Now, I fish a lot of other kinds of wings too, but when I'm using a wonder wing, it'll catch air too much if there's too many fibers there. So I am going to now tie the wonder wings on and get ready to separate them. And what you don't do when you're tying on a wonder wing is pull them out to length and tie them on. You will end up with an awful mess because thread torque will take all those fibers and twist them around each other. What you do instead is you get it very, very short so that you can temporarily use this short length of stem as a positioning device for those fibers so that thread torque doesn't mess it all up, just like I did right there. Two turns, not real tight, snug but not tight. And now I'm going to gradually relax my left fingers and pull the wings out to the length that I want them to be. Well, you would think after 60-some years at the vise that I would be really good at guessing that. Well, I'm not worth a darn at it. I still have to measure the darn things. And there's a hook, and I want them to be equal to the shank. And so there they are. Now I'll tighten up that thread and anchor them in place. Now I want to trim off the waist, and I'm going to trim that waist at a severe angle, and I always come in from the off side of the hook so that I can get a nice taper on those so that they blend really well with the waist from the tail. See, that makes a really nice taper. I'm going to have a nice smooth underbody, and with a smooth underbody, I'm not going to be having a problem. See if I can trim that without losing the whole thing. Anyway, without having a problem with the outer body. You have a really difficult time getting a good underbody if the outer body, or if you have a good looking outer body if the underbody is messed up. Now let me get over here to my whiting biots. And I've already got some selected out here, but I pulled out a long one and I took one of the biots out. And as you can see, that's what we're dealing with. And I've already got one selected right here. So you can see what we're working with. We'll just get back over here at the vise. And that's what we're going to be tying with. Notice that it's a kind of triangular shape, very fine on the point, wider towards the back. And just like with Eric's quill, this one will be the same thing. It'll be narrower at the back than it is at the front. And just like Eric did, I use about the same procedure. I stick it in there and allow it to position the biot on the bottom side of the shank. Wrap forward. And one of the things about these short biots, it's pretty difficult to wrap the doggone things without using a hackle pliers. So I'll get my hackle pliers hooked on there. Come on, quit jumping around here. There we go. And we'll just start wrapping forward, taking our time. And notice that I am wrapping it with the ridge up. If I put the biot on flipped over, then the ridge would be against the body and it would be all flat. I kind of like the way they look this way. You're the fly tyer. It's up to you to make the materials do what you want them to do. And we'll just go ahead and tie that guy off right there. Trim the waist. I can get that out of my pliers now. And now let's go take a look at the wing, or the wings, plural. I'm just going to pull them apart, crisscross between them. Get them so they're down to the side a bit. A little wrap right there on the near side. Far side is still tilted forward too much, so let me kind of set him right there in place. Let's get rid of all this extra stuff here that's causing me trouble. Trim off each one. I want you to notice how I stuck that feather in between my two fingers. It's real easy to do that. And now when I bring my other feather up, real easy to bring the two back together, line them back up, put them back in the clip because they're not waste, they're future flies. We'll just put them like that, and I'll put it back over at the materials area, waiting to tie the next fly. Now I've got a bad spot here where I did a bad job of trimming. You guys wouldn't believe how difficult it is to trim these darn things and get really close when you got a camera between you and your work. It just, well, just to show you what I'm talking about. That's the camera and that's the vise. And that blasted thing just gets in the way all the time. I don't know what I'm going to do. I guess I'll just have to quit doing this Zoom stuff if it bothers me too much. It doesn't. I'm just joking with you. Anyway, let's get back over here and get some peacock. Now, I've got a pretty lousy piece of peacock here. In fact, let's get over to the vice camera and you can let's do the opposite side one. I want you to see these are crooked and mashed and everything, but I'm just going to go ahead and use them and make them work. I'll just go ahead and tear those off. Get back to the near side. And, oh boy, maybe I shouldn't be trying to show you how to use all this bad stuff, but we'll make it work. I got 3 of them there. I'll just tie it in place. Now I'm going to use a Dutch Bachman trick using the weight of my spool of thread and the bobbin holder to keep those 3 strands of peacock tight together. So just the weight of that allows me to advance forward. And you see how the weight of that thread from the thread pushing against those fibers make it really easy to keep them together. They don't go slipping apart on me. Whoops. And I should be able to get one more turn there. Let's take a turn of thread. Take a turn, the second turn. I call that the tie wrap. And that just gives me a nice clean head and a well tied off fly without a lot of wrapping. Whoops. I just messed up there. So let's do it again. I'll just go straight to the whip finish instead. And we'll trim off that guy. And now let's take a look here. Like Eric, I like my wings to tilt up just ever so slightly. It floats onto the water a heck of a lot better than if you have them totally out straight. I'll guarantee you one of those wings, one or the other, let's take a look here. One or the other is going to be just a little bit different than its partner, and it will cause things to twist around. But if they're up slightly, what happens is they come down, they'll kind of do this little routine as they come down, settle on the water nicely, and do the job. Any questions?
Wow, that's gorgeous fly. Um, yeah, I've always thought that I could see the fly so much better with the wings tilted up a little bit like that.
Well, I must admit that there's a few of the spinner types that I do kind of a combination fly. Who in the heck was it? I'm trying to remember. Back in the day from Jackson, Wyoming. Cannot think of his name now. Well, that happens to me a lot. Anyway, he tied what he called a convertible, and he would take a fly that could do several different things, uh, and take it to the stream with a pair of scissors. And anyway, he'd cut off the parts he didn't want. Well, often I'll tie that fly with a tuft of CDC feather, stick it up there, and it'll do two things. It'll make it land really nice on the water. It doesn't change the profile to the fish very much. And if I don't want it, it's real easy to clip off while I'm on the water.
Cool.
Any questions out there? I'm
Another
sorry, Rick.
another thing I noticed about that fly, and you had no problem with it. Every time I've ever tied Wonder Wings, trying to clip that little bit off and not clip the fibers of the wing. You know what I'm talking about?
I do. That I've only been tying those for thousands of dozens. So yeah, I've done it a couple times, but I messed them up a few times getting started. Yeah. Now I would like to show you one thing. I'm going to stay on the side by side, but with Wonder Wings. I am going to show you a trick that's really especially helpful if you're fishing the more divided up wings, let's say like an Adams, a Wonder Wing Adams. You take a little bit of this, very little bit of this UV, put it right there. You don't want much, and give it a shot. You won't see much of anything there. You won't believe how that little spot will catch the light. Now, does it make any difference to the fish? I don't know. I just seem to catch an awful lot of doggone fish with it.
Oh
Now,
man,
just
that's
that little
great.
spot will catch a little flash of light every now and then. Now, whether I'm kidding myself into believing that it's worth doing that, one of the things that will happen is that little spot also strengthens the very end of that wing. I'll put this stuff away.
I just like to say a little something. I've just spotted my friend Tom Wilson here. He's not visible. He's invisible.
Oh,
Oh
that's
no.
Dot Wilson.
Well, that's Dot is his wife. He must be using her phone.
Oh,
Oh, there he is.
Her laptop.
let's get you and I out of the picture because we've done our tying and we can get everybody else. Let's see, remove spotlight, and then we'll get in with everybody else so we can all chat. There we go. Now we can all see each other and chat and so forth.
Yeah.
Hey, Jay Lee, welcome.
Hey, Jay. Yeah, a little
And
about
Nick Wilson,
Tom.
welcome.
Tom, I fished a ton with Tom, both out west and especially at Penns Creek. And Tom is wonderful fly tyer and a master fisherman. He outfishes me constantly. But that's not particularly hard to do. Anyway, it's good to see you, Tom. I'm sorry I can't join you at Penns Creek this year. It's killing me, but
I'm missing you already, man. And I'm enjoying these sessions. Rick gives me way too much credit. I don't consider myself a good fly tyer at all, but I find the more information I can learn to try to make my time better. And I find this forum is excellent for that. So you guys keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Appreciate your kind words. Well, if nothing else, it looks like we've managed to get the job done in short order today, Eric.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what we're going to do next time.
Well, let's
in
chat
my
for a
head.
minute. We've got a minute or two. We got to figure out something that we're going to do next time. So while you're
Yeah,
thinking about it, let me get my wrap in here so I don't have to do a bunch of editing to get it. I can just do a couple of chops on my timeline. Let me get that bit of video captured. That's it for this week, folks. Thank you so much for joining us. For now, it's a wrap. Until next time.